that said he used the flashlight that night to put you to bed, and then you snuck downstairs to play.
Yeah, I had some toy that I wanted to put together. I remember being downstairs after everyone was kind of in bed and wanting to get this thing out.
Did you use the flashlight so you wouldn't be seen?
I don't remember. I just remember being downstairs. I remember this.
If he knew anything, it would not be something he would thought
is important. That's what I'm saying. Like, I wonder if there's something in there, like, even, so I know in the Dr. Phil, one of the things that came out was the idea that you use a flashlight to put him to sleep and that he came back down to play with a toy. Like, when he's down and people are sleeping, has he ever talked, like, did he get the sense that someone else was in the home? Did he hear anything? I don't know how long was he up?
No, we've never asked him that. I don't know. I didn't know, frankly, that he got up again. I'm not sure he did. Again, that's fiction. There's so much fiction out there.
Because it's just thrown out there. It's just Dr. Phil who says, you got up to play with the toy, and Burke says, yeah, I did. It was something that I wanted to put together. And then it kind of just like...
Well, again, when we got home, JonBenet had fallen asleep.
But I know you and Burke came.
Put her to bed. Burke and I sat down and tried to put together one of his little toys for a little while, just because he wanted to. And then he went off to bed.
You're saying like that whatever Dr. Phil said and Burke said on the show, he didn't come back down?
I didn't know that he came back down, if he did.
Does stuff like that make you want to be like, oh my gosh, maybe there's something he knows?
Burke would have said something if something was weird, but he may have misunderstood the question too.
Shout out to, what was it? BDI, JDI, PDI 1996 on TikTok for preserving that little gem for us. Much needed. It's hard to find this particular part of the interview. I mean, it's like they scrubbed it from the internet. You know, you can get a lot of Dr. Phil interviews on YouTube and what have you, but that part is scrubbed. I guess it's scrubbed because it's something central to the case. We know that there are times in which, and let me just state up front, I am excited for this. I'm excited to kind of present today what I have, because I feel like this is critical. So we know that as you go through the interview narrative, John Ramsey often doesn't know things. I want you to take a look before we get started at 56 here. Look at this look at this body language, right? His face, he's leaning back and kind of looks like he's getting a little bit stern, and we've seen this before, but he's got his arms crossed and he's kind of getting into a defensive position. But I want you to note the tone in his voice. I want you to note the tone in his voice is almost that of a disappointed parent that is getting ready to discipline the child.
We've never asked him that. I don't know. I didn't know, frankly, that he got up again.
The eye, he raises his eyebrow and he says, quite frankly, I didn't know he got up again. That reminds me of when I was young. I was young, and I would do something that I knew would be disappointing to my parents, and it was away. Maybe it was in school or something like that, and somebody would come in and back in the day, man, it was kind of like a village thing. You could discipline other people's kids at times. Well, when I was coming up, that was less likely, but when my parents were coming up, it was more likely. But still there were some instances in which I got paddled at school, to where if I acted a fool or if I did something, my dad might say, "Oh, really?" And he'd kind of tilt his head to the side when somebody told him something, and they would be like, "Yeah, he was doing this and that," and he'd turn his head to the side and be like, "Oh, really?" And he'd look at me, and my mom would do the same thing, and my mom would kind of look at me, and she'd just kind of shake her head like that and be like, "Oh, okay. Well, okay. Well, thanks for letting me know. We're gonna have to talk about that when we get home." And that's kind of what John did right here. That was interesting. It's almost like there's a reprimanding of Burke because Ashley is kind of in a position where she's telling on Burke. She's saying, "Hey, ooh, look at what Burke did. Burke said he got back up and went back down the stairs." That's not supposed to be part of the narrative. We're not supposed to be talking about that. So the fact that you went on television and you didn't talk about something, or you talked about something that was not supposed to be part of the narrative, oh, really? Because, and this is why this would frustrate John, because in the police report, John said Burke was sleep all night, didn't get up, didn't move, didn't do nothing. And Burke is like, "Oh, yeah," just running his mouth. "Oh, yeah, I got back up. Yeah, and I just had to go play with that toy." And John is like, "Oh, really? You just had to tell him you had to go down and play with that toy. It was that important to you, huh? Oh, really?" And so John, he has to get back on his game and he has to clean it up and say, "Well, Burke may not have understood the question, and quite frankly, I didn't know he got up, and I don't know if anything did happen. He would have told us." Yeah. Before we before we keep going here, I gotta say thank you to several important people. Eve of West, I appreciate you so much. Dropping a big 9.99. Catherine coming through again. That's KMRQ12. And a channel member. Whoop whoop. Dropping a big 9.99. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. And then CME 127 dropping a big 9.99. Says thanks. And then "You are amazing. Keep it going. I appreciate the love, appreciate the support, appreciate the encouragement, appreciate everybody liking the gifts. We love support around here. It's awesome. Once again, not that you just have to, but it is very much appreciated. And thank you for sponsoring this video. Hope you enjoy it. So, put together a little report so I can kind of keep myself in line, because you know how I get. I get a little excited and sometimes I trail off, trying to be a little bit more disciplined, stick to the script, because there's so many aspects to this case. And if you couldn't tell, I just went on a tangent just to start this video. I was supposed to be talking about this, but I wasn't. The introduction says, because there's so many aspects, I was going to finish my sentence. So many aspects to this case that are just crazy. But when you start pulling them together, the behavior is very linear. So we're going to look today at a collection of interviews where we're going to discuss. I'm not going to look specifically at them, but we're going to discuss a collection of interviews with John and Patsy Ramsey. They're 97 and 98 interviews, and maybe interviews from other things, trying to navigate specifically the night of December 25th to better understand. And we've talked about the timeline, but better understand bedtime behaviors and habits of both JonBenet and Burke. And so we've done the timeline before. We've built a timeline before. We've tried to timeline the night, and then that's all great. We'll probably do that sometime in the future. But this is not necessarily just about building the timeline. I want to get to something more important. Like it says, it's about reading between the lines. What did they say about how the kids usually behave at nighttime? How do John and Patsy describe the routines of JonBenet and Burke at nighttime? What do they remember clearly? And what seemed to shift between interviews? That is 97 and 98. So we're going to explore those nuances in sequence, sort of laying the groundwork before we get to that critical detail that can unlock possibly what happened that night. So, as we remember, and I had to go back and look at this because this kind of threw me off a little bit. And I want to do it both in John's timeline and the police's timeline, because I know the police said that John stated they got home at 10, but I want to do it in John's timeline to show that even in John's timeline, it doesn't work. Christmas night, about 8:30, in the interviews, John says, "Yeah, we left the White's house around 8:30." And he says, "We went to the Walker's house, and then we went to the Stein's house. When we went to the Walker's house, we spent about 10 to 15 minutes over there. And when we went to the Stein's house, we spent about 10 minutes over there. And when we went to the Walker's house, it took us about 5 to 6 minutes to get there. And then we spent about 10 to 15 minutes over there. And then, we left there and we went to the Stein's house, and it took us about 2 to 3 minutes to get there. And then we spent about 10 minutes over there. And then, we had probably about a 1 to 2 minute drive home." And that's the emphasis on me. And I think they pulled into the garage in the back. And so even though the police say 10 p.m., what we can see here is from 8:30, and Patsy said they left about 8:45, 9-ish. That's not on the timeline here. Should I look at that timeline? Nah, I ain't gonna do it. I'm gonna leave it alone. This is fine. So if they leave at 8:30 and they drive about 5 to 6 minutes, that's about 8:35 to 8:36 by the time they get to the Walkers. And I got to do this because I want to cut through and say, okay, what is the possibility of getting JonBenet home and getting in bed? What does that look like? So we can push further. What is going to possibly look like when people really truly get into bed? And then when Burke comes down, because we're building closer, we know 5:45, 5:30 or 5:45, or let's say 5:52 is on our back. 5:52 a.m. is on our back because that's when they called the police. So we know that JonBenet was dead or deceased at 5:52 a.m. on the morning of Christmas, or I'm sorry, on the morning of December 26th. But trying to work up to find when JonBenet died. We've gone through the rigor mortis, the liver mortis, and all such as that. But so they leave at 8:30, and this is the earliest, according to John. They leave at 8:30. They arrive at the Walker's house. They stay about 10 to 15 minutes, and then they leave at about 8:45, 8:51, somewhere around there. We're already close to 9 o'clock. They go to the Steins. It takes them about 2 or 3 minutes, so about 8:47 to 8:54 at the latest. Stay about 10 minutes, so 8:57 to 9:04. And then they leave the Steins' house, 8:58 to 9:06, approximately the time that they arrive home. So, first of all, there's not really any way, reasonably, that you're telling me that JonBenet got into bed at 9 o'clock, because he said about 9:15. Okay, it's going to be closer to 9:15. And 9:10, 9:15, going to be closer to 9:10, 9:15, because you got to get JonBenet out the car. You're not going to be in a rush. You're not going to be speeding. And so it's probably going to take you maybe 2 or 3 minutes to get her out of the car. John said he almost dropped her. Okay. At the latest, according to about, I think they said, at the latest, I think Patsy said, because this is 8:30 was John. Patsy said maybe 8:45, maybe 9-ish. So that would put them getting home at about 9:36 if we go by Patsy's timeline. some of the contradictions in that ride home. John said that Burke was asleep in the car in the interview. He said, Burke got in there, he was knocked out. By my calculation, from driving, when we drive from Fleet White's house to the time they get to the Walker's house, we assume that Burke stays asleep all the while they're at the Walker's house. That's about 21 minutes that Burke, falls asleep. I wanted to check to see if they had taken a nap that night, and I don't think they did. By the way, a note aside, one of the questions that I didn't get to last episode was asking if JonBenet was referred to any specialists instead of just going strictly to Dr. Buff. Not that I can recount, not that I saw. So, Burke was probably asleep for about 20 minutes. And when they got home, Patsy, to align with Burke not wanting to go to sleep, Patsy says she remembers that Burke was basically full of energy. He still wanted to play. And so essentially what we have here to back up the fact that Burke said he stayed awake is that the boy was full of energy. He was full of energy. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to play. We know that. We know that Burke used to be full of energy and high energy, kind of like just juiced up on energy. At the Walker's house, Patsy and John kind of state that they all stayed in the car, and Patsy went to the door alone. And apparently, and I think this is Roxy Walker. So apparently whatever her and Roxy had to talk about, it was super in depth, because you stand there, instead of just passing the gift basket to them, you stand there and you talk for 10, 15 minutes while the car runs. John is sitting in the car, just sitting there while the car runs. So in total, in this entire thing, John is probably sitting in the car, just letting the car idle for about 25 minutes, 25, 30 minutes, something like that. And so they all stay in the car. But somewhere along the line, Burke gets, and this is where they both get fuzzy, Burke wakes up. I don't know if it's because the car stopped and Burke noticed, maybe his eyes were kind of opening and he's like, oh, we're at the Stein's house. But Burke wakes up, and Patsy says Burke may have jumped out of the car at the Steins because because of his friends. He's friends with Doug. And John basically says, I don't really know whether or not, I don't really know whether or not Burke got out the car. But if he did, it wouldn't be unusual because Doug is his buddy, so they're kind of on the same page. John and Patsy kind of said the same thing there. So apparently Burke, full of energy, jumps up and he's ready to go. And so we're not far from home, and he jumps up just in time to go out and basically be full of energy. He just needed a little power nap is what he needed. Just need a little power nap before I get to playing with these toys. I've been playing with my Nintendo 64 all day, for Christmas, but I'm still ready to go. I still didn't get time to play with this little toy that I got to put together. And he probably needed John to put it together. Is why he waited. So Burke has a lot of energy. Burke has a lot of energy to kind of just energize her bunny, keep going and going and going and going and going. He has a lot of that. We become unclear with the timeline because I think it says, I kind of struggled to read the transcript because I think it says that JonBenet, I remember John saying that JonBenet, or John put JonBenet to bed around 9:15. But it also seems to indicate that they may have put Burke to bed around 9:15. John says, I went on upstairs and that allowed me to kind of get ready for my bedtime routine, brushing my teeth, and all such as that, just kind of getting ready for bed is what he said. And then he said, I may have laid in the bed for a little bit and read a book before I went to sleep at about 10. And so, and when they asked about Patsy, he was like, yeah, Patsy, she was out like a light. She's a hard sleeper. And it's very interesting because Patsy describes John as a heavy sleeper, and then vice versa. John describes Patsy as a heavy sleeper. He called her Queen of Sleep. But Patsy describes herself as a light sleeper and John as a heavy sleeper. And that'll make sense as to why. So if Burke was put to sleep at 9 or 9:15, that wouldn't make sense because they didn't even get home till about 9:06, 8:58 or 9:06. Right? It takes you some time to get out of bed. Y'all probably didn't get in the house till about 9:10. And so I need to close the gap on when you actually got inside and put JonBenet to bed, so we can sort of squeeze between 9 and 5:45 when everything happened. And so it's kind of hard to reconcile that, because then after he goes upstairs and puts JonBenet to bed, he says we spent about 10 to 20 minutes. I spent about 10 to 20 minutes playing with Burke, and then we got him to bed. John goes on to say that he never woke up due to his kids' movements. He's like, when I'm out, I'm out. You know, I took a melatonin. I went over there. I brushed my teeth. Took a melatonin. When I'm out, I'm out. Patsy said that now Patsy is a little bit more. She's a little bit more of a light sleeper. Now, if you are in the member chat, I released a video kind of talking about the proximity of the bed to the alarm system on the 3rd floor. And I made the point that Patsy is closer to the stairs. I don't know if I have it here. I'll pull it up. I was making the case that Patsy, the bed is right here. The alarm system is right here. If Patsy is sleeping on this side of the bed, John is sleeping on this side of the bed, and the alarm system is here, then John just straight up didn't press the alarm. The alarm is right here. And it's crazy because John said he took a melatonin. I don't know how long it takes for melatonin to set in, but it didn't act quick enough for you to be able to sit over here and read a little bit, right? So you're telling me that you were attentive to the house, you locked every door in the house, and you weren't tired enough. You made sure that the house was secure. You weren't tired enough. You came up here, brushed your teeth. You weren't tired enough. After all you did, been up since 6:30, you came up here, and instead of turning on the alarm system, you started reading a book and then fell asleep, knocked out, without even hitting the button. The button's right here by you. Didn't even turn it on. That's what you expect me to believe. Military-minded, very security-driven. Oh, the U.S., the strong arm of the law. You know, the U.S. needs to do something. We need to defend and fight and say our babies are not going to deal with this. And you can't, how are you going to defend the children of America if you can't even just hit a button? You know, you're too tired to responsibly just hit a button and the entire house is secure for certain. And you're talking about protecting America? Okay. But anyways, Patsy's on this side of the bed. The steps closest to Patsy are right here. This is going to go to the 1st and 2nd floor. This is up by the front door. And this is the staircase to go to JonBenet's room. And so when we talk about that, let me go back here. When we talk about that, I say that to say that on the 2nd floor now, here's Burke's bedroom, right below John and Patsy's. And here's Burke's bathroom, right by the stairs. So what Patsy was saying is when Burke goes and uses the restroom, I can hear him. So she knows if Burke gets up and he's reasonably loud, Patsy can hear what's going on. And so I can hear John saying, I'm knocked out. I can't hear anything. When the kids go to sleep, I can't hear anything they're doing. I'm knocked out. If anybody's going to hear the kids do anything, it's going to be Patsy. Patsy's going to hear it. And Patsy's like, oh, yeah, absolutely. I hear, my ears are perked up. I'll listen. I listen to when they get up. I can hear Burke when he goes to the restroom. Okay. Post-arrival routines and entry points. According to John, they typically park near the back, or from what I understand, the night of Christmas. Let's deal with that. They park near the back of the house, enter through the garage. You would have to. Or maybe not, just depending. We know that there are several entry points. Here's the garage. If you park in the garage is right here. You pull up right here. Here's the garage door, as I understand it. You pull in through here. You got your Jeep and the Jaguar, and you pull in here. Uh, it would make sense to me if you pulled right here. It would make sense to me that you'd go straight through here. You just open the door, unless the garage was messy, and you don't park in the garage. But if you park in the garage, boom, you go right here. You go through this door, and there is an alarm system right there that you just pass up. But John couldn't touch it because, you know, he's got JonBenet in his hands. He doesn't want to drop her. Um, but Patsy could have pressed it. Or if you park right here, you really don't want to mess with it. Really don't want anything to do with it. You park right here. Don't want to go in. I can go this way. I can go through this door, come through here, and go through this door, and I'm in the house. Or if I don't really like going through this door, for whatever reason, you don't like going to the store, you could come all the way around here and go through here, and this would lead you straight to the kitchen, in which you have direct access to go up these stairs, these spiral staircase, and take JonBenet to bed. Where Burke would be like, "Ooh, cool, it's time to go play with toys," and he would run through the kitchen and go to the living room where you guys open presents and start playing with toys. And that would leave you, if you're having to deal with Burke, if you're John, you're having to deal with Burke, you come back down these stairs, you come from JonBenet's side of the house, over here, you come from over here, oh my goodness, you up, drudge, come up here, and you put JonBenet to bed. Patsy is following you up, Burke runs, and he's playing with everything. Patsy's following you up, and comes and takes care of JonBenet. What I did note, and what was interesting to me, is that Patsy said that JonBenet was, she left the light off because it was in the dark, is what she said. She left the light off because she didn't want to wake JonBenet. Okay, that's fine. So, drudge. They both come up here. John leaves out, and he probably goes through here, the playroom, and then down, because that's going to be closest to where Burke is, downstairs on the first floor, while Patsy is right here. Patsy, if she's tired, she's not going to mess with anything else. She's just going to come up, yes, she's just going to come up these stairs right here and go back upstairs to the third floor, get ready to go to sleep, let John handle this thing. He should be up in a little bit after tending to Burke, is what the interviews tell us. John was dealing with Burke. I let him do it, or whatever. So, and she said, I went on up and I went to bed. So she would come here. But Patsy is nearby and she can hear. So they park near and they come through the garage, which would bring them to the spiral staircase, led them up to JonBenet's room, and John carries her up the stairs and said she was really out. Now, and as we said before, John said something to the effect of, he almost dropped her. It's 45 pounds. It's 45 pounds. Why would you almost drop her? Adding, she never woke up. Patsy recalled changing JonBenet in the dark. And Patsy would also say, yeah, JonBenet was just out like a light. She was never going to get up. But anyways, changing her in the dark so not to wake her up. John noted that when he later took Burke to bed, that he used the front staircase. And I thought that was funny because it's closer to Burke. I know why he used it, because it's closer to Burke's room, as we saw. So he's saying if this is the first floor, he's saying he used this staircase, meaning they were probably in the living room, because that makes the most sense. So they used a staircase to go up to the second floor right here, because Burke's room is right there. I know why he did it, but it's funny to me that he was very specific in saying that we used the front stairs. And I was like, yes, you would use the front stairs. Absolutely, you would use the front stairs. You would use the front stairs because it makes the most sense. You would not, as Patsy is having us to believe, come out of this room, go right here, pass up these stairs, ho hum, ho hum, ho hum, ho hum, and then go to these stairs, walk up these stairs, be right here, end up right here on the second floor on JonBenet's room, and then come up here and go to these stairs to your room on the third floor, and then come all the way from across the room to your bed over here. You would not do that. But that's where Patsy is saying she got up, and then in the morning time she's saying I got up and I went all the way over here, and I came over here, and then I came down these stairs to go here. Because it's kind of like the question, because when we talk about what makes sense in the case and the logic of the case, it don't make sense. Patsy walking down this spiral staircase to wake up in the morning doesn't make sense. Like Bill Curtis was being shown by one of the Ramsey investigators. He was being shown through the house. He was being walked through the house, and uh, when they came here and they said, okay, we come down the spiral staircase, and the individual comes down the spiral staircase with JonBenet, and they came through here in this lower hallway. Remember, this is the butler's kitchen, and here's a door that leads to the back. And it's easy because right here, guess what? I got a door coming out here. Boom. I come out here, and guess what? This is the street out here. This is the street. If I come out of this door, I come right down the spiral staircase. I come out of this door right here, boom, and I'm out here in the street. I tell my people, be waiting for me in the back. I jump in the car, we gone. No rigmarole, no nonsense. But what this criminal did was they took JonBenet down these stairs, passed up this easy exit point. This is a full door. A full door. Any human can fit through this. If we're talking about Linda Hoffman, if we're talking about Bill McReynolds, the path of least resistance, Bill McReynolds just had heart surgery. Bill McReynolds is going to walk out of the door. If he has an opportunity to take JonBenet, he's going to walk right on out of the door. If we're going to do a kidnapping, because there's probably all kinds of trees and shrubbery over here, so he's been able, and it's nighttime, so he's been able to be hid and covered by night. Guess what? The only window, they have a window right here. John and Patsy have a window right here, but they can't get to that window. John and Patsy don't have any other windows. This window is over the stairs, so you can only just look straight through the window. So if Bill McReynolds or Linda Hoffman Pugh wanted to do whatever they did, and they know the room, they know the house like the back of their hand, they would come through the butler's kitchen, go right here. Can't nobody see them. Melinda ain't here. She can't see him no way. If Melinda was here, she could have looked out this window. But JonBenet is gone. Burke is on this other side of the house. If he wanted to look through here, he could, but Burke is asleep. He should be asleep, but if he was up in his room, he probably would have been, because Dr. Phil asked him, did you see anything? Did you hear anything? Oh, no, I didn't hear nothing. Well, you should have if you in your room sleep, right? If you were in your room sleep, then you would have been able to look out this window and possibly dart over and see somebody taking JonBenet. You could have done what they did in Elizabeth Smart case. And like her sister was able to say, a man came in, took my sister, here's what he looked like. And you could have helped us out immensely. But you didn't, because you were downstairs playing with your toy. And you could have, anybody who was going down this path, you could have seen them. And so what Bill Curtis was saying is that you come down these stairs, boom, right here. But instead, the criminal goes this way and goes this way to take the stairs down to the basement. What criminal would do that? I'm confused. Why would a criminal waste their time passing this up, easy exit, to go all the way here, go downstairs, keep JonBenet in the house when they don't have to, go down here, go down these stairs, and go over here and mess with JonBenet in the wine cellar? Because now we have to ask, where exactly, it's so dirty down there, where exactly would that, it's dirty down here, so this is not conducive. You would take JonBenet This is the bathroom. You wouldn't take her over there. They said some weird stuff, some silly stuff about the bathroom. They were talking about, oh, there's a John was like, oh, there's some wrapping paper, in the bathroom. I think Burke may have used we never really used the bathroom down here in the basement. I think Burke may or may not have used the bathroom down here. And I think Evan Kobe, really trying to mess with Evan Kobe. Um, he said, Evan Kobe may have used the bathroom down here, but when I went in there, there was some toilet paper in there, and that's highly unusual because we don't go in the bathroom, bro. John, come on, man. It's just toilet paper. It's just toilet paper. At some point in time, I don't. It doesn't matter how long the toilet paper is in there. People need toilet paper. Okay, is that okay? Like, it's not. What are you suggesting with that? You see what I'm saying? All of this nonsense. What are you suggesting with the toilet paper? What does that even mean? Why are we talking about that? Are you trying to suggest that the criminal had to use the restroom at some point in time? So he's like, oh, you know what I need to do? I'm gonna, I need to use the restroom. Yeah, I'm gonna go get the toilet paper and I'm gonna move it down here, and because that don't make sense because there's a window right here. He could escape. So he would have clearly seen a window right here. And guess what? The toilet allows you to step up on here and go out the window easily. No problem. No problem. We'll see that. We're going to do a field trip. And we'll see that. But you could have escaped clearly through here. But the criminal said, that would be too easy. Never let them know your next move. Always keep them guessing, is what the criminal says. So you got a dirty mess down here. You got a dirty mess down here, and you got a mess in here in the storage room. So I'm not really sure where this assault of JonBenet was supposed to take place, other than somewhere in here. You have the crawl space, and you have the boiler room, and you have around here. This is not conducive. This is out in the open. This is out in the open. This is really out in the open. I mean, like, this is kind of out in the open. This is out in the open. You're really and truly. But this is more hid than anything, honestly. And you would have to either go here to assault JonBenet if you want to be hid, or you would have to go here to assault JonBenet if you really want to be hidden. Because anybody, if somebody pops in and for whatever reason, because Linda Hoffman used to wash the comforters and stuff, like, according to the interviews, Linda Hoffman used to wash the comforters in this laundry room downstairs. That's what that was used for. It was the more heavy duty washer and dryer, while clothes and everything were done upstairs done upstairs on the second story washer and dryer room right here. But anyways, where would this have taken place? I don't think we really ever even talk about that. Where would this have taken place? You can hide right here, and you can hide right here. There's mold in here. It's nasty. It's disgusting. Not many people just want to take their time and play in here and whatnot. Really and truly. Or right here. If this is going to happen again, we're talking about somebody very specific. We can no longer just be general, right? We can't just say generally. This is somebody who generally, if the person was in the house, casing the house for several hours prior to John and Patsy coming back home, then they probably already scoped out. If they're as smart as we're led to believe that they are, then they probably scoped this place out and said, okay, this is going to be a good spot where I can stay away from people. I'm not going to be in the light. This is also going to be a good spot where I'm not in the light, because you know what? When we do a field trip, we're going to, let me see. You know what? Let's just do it now. We're talking about, I'll do it a little bit later. I'll just briefly kind of talk about it. The ransom note was found here, right? There were, the writing pad was found here. The cup of pens was found here. This is the kitchen. The cup of pens was found here. The phone is right here. That Patsy used. The phone is right here. The criminal, we're supposed to believe, if the note was here and the pad was here, then it's likely that the criminal wrote the note right here. The intruder wrote the note right here. But the problem is this is in broad daylight. What criminal do you know is that risky to just be in broad daylight in the house? I know it was dark, but if they know Patsy is prone to coming down the staircase, Patsy could wake up at any time, and just happen to come down that staircase. JonBenet, Burke could just happen to come down that staircase at any time for any reason, just because. Because Burke was prone to getting up sometimes at nighttime, right? So what we're saying is the notepad, the ransom note, the notepad was found right here, letting us know that this criminal was frequenting this area right here at some point in time. And the Sharpie pens were right here. They used a pen from the Sharpie. They used the Sharpie pen from this cup right here, from this cup. So either this cup of Sharpie pens was right here, or it was right here, and they got the pen from right here, and then went and used the pad here, or they had the pad in here and they wrote it, put the pad here on their way to the stairs, dropped it off at the stairs, came all the way back, went to the basement, and escaped out the window. That is confusion. A criminal is not going to do that. A criminal is not going to do that at all. Because if I'm writing the note here, I put the pad here, the cup of pens are going to stay here, which is probably where they found the cup of pens in the first place. And then I'm going to go out through the store and I'm going to leave with JonBenet. If something happened, this individual, if they went all the way through here with JonBenet and decided just to have the assault in the house, which is what we're being led to believe. Let's just say, for the sake of time, for the sake of argument, this intruder decided to take JonBenet through here, take her downstairs because they wanted to do this in the house for whatever messed up fantasy they have. It has to be done in the house. Maybe that's their fantasy. It has to be done in the house. So they do it in the house. JonBenet, something happens. JonBenet is downstairs, right? And she's laying downstairs. They know they've done wrong. They've committed a homicide. This person comes back upstairs, goes and writes a letter because it had to be after. They go and write because there's nothing has happened at this point, because they weren't planning to kidnap JonBenet. But what they're doing now is what they've done is they committed a homicide. They don't know what to do, and now they're thinking about writing the note. So they come upstairs afterwards. So the writing of the note happened after JonBenet was dead. And so they come upstairs and they're in the kitchen and they're looking for a pen and pad. There's nothing in there. And so probably the pen and pad was found right here. If the ransom note pad was found right here, then the pens were probably found over here too. Because there were also other notes and checks around this place too. So that's probably where you're going to have your writing utensils in your pad. So the pad was found right here. And guess what? You only have to go a couple of steps. So maybe it's not that the individuals knew where Patsy was going to come. It's just that this was the most logical place. If I took JonBenet from downstairs and brought her here, this is the most logical place that I'm going to do that. Right? And it makes sense. So we know that the criminal was frequenting this area right here. But then for some reason, they know they've killed JonBenet. Instead of leaving out here, they come back downstairs and they go out the basement. The alarm's not set. They're well aware that the alarm's not set because John came in and they've been watching every single move, and they know when they went to bed and no alarm was clicked or armed. They didn't hear anything, so they would know that the alarm is not set, and so they could go right out here out the door. Easy. I'm gone. I've gotten away with murder. I'm done. But instead, for some reason, they came back and went through the basement, and then came back through the basement, and ended up, we're over the train room right here, and then we're in the storage room, jumped on the suitcase right here, popped up from under this window where the grate is, where you have the grate here, popped up from under this window and left, and either took off this way or took off this way toward the front of the house. That's what we're being led to believe. So, getting back to our point here, John is specific to tell us that he used the front staircase. And I went on that tangent to show that there is some consistency. I know Patsy is telling us that she used this staircase, but when John says the most logical place for us to go up the stairs is this front step, is these front stairs, because that's where Burke's bed is, and that's where I need to get to my bed too. That's going to be the closest place to my bed. So it's more probable that Patsy had no reason to come down here. She had no reason to come this way that night. She probably more likely, if she did wake up after the fact, she probably more likely came down this way. That's a linear path. And a lot of times, people are going to follow a linear path. The criminal, you can't help but follow a linear path. That's why there was some triangulation around here, following the linear path. But then, boom, the cup of pins ends up around here. What have you often done when you're in a rush? You're rushing around this and that, and you walk out, right? You walk out with your pen, and you're like, why do I have this pen in my hand? And you drop it. Why? Because you forgot that you're rushing around, you forgot that it was in your hand. This person had to be frantic because they were rushing around and they left the cup of pins right here. Funny, though, that it was right in front of the telephone. That's funny. That's odd. Because Patsy made the call. And they're saying that Patsy wrote the note. If it were Patsy who wrote the note, then we know Patsy made the call. That would mean that Patsy was triangulating around here. She wrote the note here, put it right here, ran right here, and then said, okay, let's call the police. So when we want to know what's happening between 5:30 and 5:45, or we want to know what's happening between 5 o'clock and 5:52, a note is being written for 30 minutes. Somebody's writing a note for 30 minutes right here. They drop it right here and they frantically run. They keep the cup of pins in their hand. For some reason, they forget it's there. And then they drop it right here just to get it out. They remember it's in their hand. They drop it right here to get it out of their hand. And then they back up right here to the phone and make a call. I'm just speculating. I'm just speculating on a possibility of triangulation in a more linear path. Boom, boom. Because there's no way that that person would have been like, right here, place it here, place the pins right here, run downstairs and jump out the window right here. They would have, because this is easy, I would have wrote it here, left the cup there, dropped it off right here, come right here. However I got in the house, I would have probably left the same way, because what they were trying to suggest at one point in time is that the criminal came through this room, came through this door, even though, anyways, there was no evidence to suggest that, but the criminal apparently in the nighttime, or it had to be in broad daylight, something like that, or maybe in the nighttime, but it's still the front of the house. I think closest to it's the open area, climbed on the balcony and came through JonBenet's room. You've got to be kidding me. Came through JonBenet's room and broke through here, picked up JonBenet and came downstairs. They got in through this way, but for whatever reason, they came down here. Who knows? Came down here and then just decided to come back through this way. There are a myriad of other ins and outs according to what's the guy's name? Mike Bynum. But they chose those routes. That doesn't make sense. And so that kind of helps us understand a little bit more about the linear path that kind of throws a wrench in this entire thing. So we look at the nighttime routines of John and or the really the kids is what I want to do. Looking at the nighttime routines of the kids. Patsy said JonBenet, well, when describing the children's normal nighttime routines or their normal nighttime habits, Patsy said JonBenet did not usually come into their room with nightmares. She also didn't cry out. However, if she wet the bed, Patsy said it occurred maybe once a week, maybe twice. And this is kind of where I want to get to. This is why when we look at why Patsy was being watched by everybody, this is why. When we look at the nighttime routine, Patsy said this in an interview. Maybe once a week, maybe twice. She might either stay in the wet clothes and sleep, or she might get up and change her nightgown and leave the wet one on the bathroom floor. You remember the pajama pants on the floor of JonBenet's bathroom. You might remember that. So this is JonBenet's bathroom, and you can see a little item of clothing down here on the ground. And so, JonBenet would wake up and, possibly just throw some stuff on the ground. So she might stay wet until the morning time, get up, change her nightgown, and leave the wet one on the bathroom floor. Patsy emphasized that if JonBenet had not gone to the bathroom before bed, there was a higher likelihood that she would wet the bed. Said it was a possibility. Not all the time, not necessarily, but a higher likelihood. And when the detectives pressed her, she said, yeah, it's a higher probability. If we didn't take her to the bathroom before she went to sleep, then it's a possibility that she was going to wet the bed. For Burke, we might wait a little longer to reel that part. For Burke, John said he wasn't aware of his nighttime movements, but Patsy stated that she could hear him get up, use the restroom, saying, I would hear him when he got up. Our bedroom is right above his. Burke slept with the bathroom light on and occasionally talked in his sleep. Well, now, what Burke would do, Burke would leave his door open. He would leave his door cracked so he could see the bathroom light. I don't think he liked any lights on in his room, but he would leave it cracked so he could kind of see that bathroom light. And so Patsy was aware of this, and he also occasionally talked in his sleep, but it didn't bother John. According to John, if Burke was found in the other bed downstairs, and this is what John said in the interview, if Burke was found downstairs in the other bed downstairs, it was guaranteed what had happened, implying a bedwetting incident had occurred is what he was saying. So, moving on to the night of December 25th, on Christmas night, JonBenet reportedly fell asleep in the car. John said, and Patsy said, or John said, and Patsy added that she was zonked, is what she said. She never awakened the whole time from the car to bed that night. She was undressed and put in her pajamas in the dark. Importantly, Patsy confirmed, I did not take her to the bathroom before bed, which is what they asked her. My problem with this is that Patsy said she dressed her in the dark. But when you look at the crime scene photos, the light is on. Meaning that either the cops turned it on or that light was never off. I'm just saying, if we're gonna lie about some small stuff, then we also gonna lie about some big stuff. If you lying about small stuff, then you probably lying about some big stuff. But you know what? I'm not gonna argue that point. I'm gonna leave it where it's at because I don't even need to argue that. That is what it is. So she said I didn't take her, and they asked her specifically, which I'm glad they did. Police bungling is what they said, but they asked her the right question here. Did you take her to bed that night? Coming from because she went to sleep at Fleet White's house at 8:30, 8:45, and now we're all the way at home. Did you take her to the bathroom when you got home? No. So just what we were talking about, there's a higher probability that if you don't take her to the bathroom, she might use the restroom on herself, right? Right. So she just might. Okay. Burke, on the other hand, was awake when they got home. He was ready to play. John said he was downstairs putting together a toy, some kind of assembly thing. He added, we worked on it maybe about 10 to 20 minutes. Patsy said she believed John put Burke to bed that night and not her. John noted that they took the front stairs because it was closer, reinforcing the idea that Burke's room was within earshot of the master bedroom. Now, I'll give it to you. The critical detail in JonBenet's bedwetting movement at midnight or at nighttime. This is the moment everything hinges on right here. Patsy confirmed that she did not take JonBenet to the bathroom before bed on Christmas night. She said if she doesn't go to bed, she doesn't go before bed, there's a higher likelihood, or they talked about there's a higher likelihood that JonBenet is going to go to the bathroom. She also acknowledges, and here's a critical point, she acknowledged that JonBenet sometimes got up to change herself. This right here, what I'm about to say, is critical. Sometimes when JonBenet went to bed and Patsy just let it fly, Patsy just let this thing fly like it was nothing. Y'all talking about y'all don't understand pineapples. Y'all don't know no pineapples. Y'all don't understand why this got here. You don't understand why this got here. I don't know to this. I don't know to that. Don't know. That ain't my paintbrush. That ain't my, and all that. This is the thing that they slipped up on because we're looking for possibilities. Sometimes when JonBenet would wet the bed, she would either lay in it all night until morning. She might get up and change her clothes and lay in the other bed. Or JonBenet might get up and go lay in the spare bed in Burke's room. That little detail right there. So John said that Burke didn't get up. And Burke said, yes, I did. Contradiction. Somebody's lying. And then they said that JonBenet is a hard sleeper. She's zoinked. She doesn't get up all night. She's just knocked out like a light. But then, and they say, I went to bed and JonBenet is going to be asleep all night. But then you come back and you say, well, if I don't take her to the restroom before bed, there's a higher likelihood that she gets up. And not only does she get up, but at the point in which JonBenet gets up, she's awake. She either gets in the other bed and goes back to sleep, depending on how tired she is, but she's awake enough to change her own clothes. So she's cognizant when she's awake. Tell me more. Or Patsy was like, you're going to love this. She goes in her brother's room and lays in his bed. Oh. Do pray tell what JonBenet may find if she were to wake up, because it's highly likely that she did wake up. Neither one of your kids may have been asleep that night like you thought. It's Christmas night. Why is this important? Because I've been speculating about this for a couple months now. And I was like, man, JonBenet had to get up or something. She's got to get up because they're telling us that, nope, I was asleep. Nothing happened. Well, John, you wouldn't know if your kids got up at all, according to you, because your kids moving around when you're asleep don't mean nothing. You're out to the world. So you wouldn't know what was happening. But for Patsy's like, I hear everything. I hear Burke getting up. When we talked about the triangulation of Patsy and Burke together, there is a relationship there. This is baby number one, and there is a relationship there. Even if there is something wrong with Burke, and I'm not saying that there is, but there's been a lot of speculation around it. But even if there is something wrong with Burke, he and Patsy have a special bond. And Patsy's going to look out for him. That's her baby. Her ear is, especially now, JonBenet is a superstar right now, but her ear is still attuned to what Burke is doing. I hear my son, my baby boy, I hear my number one using the restroom. What that communicates instinctually and unconsciously or subconsciously, my baby's okay. Everything's fine. I typically wait for him to go back to bed and whatnot and doing his thing. Okay, he's going back to bed. I can go back to sleep now. Or if I don't, because if your ears are that attuned, because that ain't just right down. Either he pees very loud or Patsy's hearing is very good. Very good. Because if Patsy's hearing is that good, it's possible that she could have heard a faint scream from the basement, because the basement is just because the basement, if they were in the basement, because the basement ain't nothing but, because if I'm Patsy, boom, I'm coming down these stairs. Boom, coming down these stairs. Boom, I'm coming down these stairs. I'm on the first floor. And I'm going to keep on going down to the basement. Depending on what was going on and what happened, it's possible that Patsy heard clear down if the scream or if anything was loud enough. She said, and she tried to clean it up by saying it's very seldom, but it does happen. And especially on this point, when there may have been more of a motivation for JonBenet to get up and go because it's Christmas. JonBenet probably doesn't want to go. John said something to the effect that JonBenet was starting to become scared of the dark, so it's hard for him to believe that she would have gone down there by herself, gone down to the kitchen by herself to even deal with eating pineapple. But what if JonBenet woke up, went to Burke's room after she used the restroom on herself, and went looking for Burke, came in the room, went looking for Burke, and maybe she was halfway asleep, halfway not, but understanding that as part of her being halfway asleep, when she looked around and didn't see Burke, she was like, where's my brother at? And so she went downstairs looking for Burke. And now we have where JonBenet and Burke may have been up at the same time. Now we have the intersection to say that it's possible that no intruder woke JonBenet up at all. whatever may have been going on, possibly the intruder, if the intruder was there, was thwarted by the fact that instead of the intruder getting JonBenet up, then JonBenet got up herself and started moving around and moseying around the house by herself. And so the intruder can't just get up and go grab JonBenet. It's like, dang, you thwarted me. Because JonBenet could have gotten up and went to the restroom. And what you're telling me is that JonBenet hadn't gone to bed in so long, hadn't gone to bed. Well, she had been asleep for a little while. So if the intruder would have come in, not only is it possible that JonBenet would have gotten up, but it's very probable that JonBenet would have gotten up anyway. And they would have tried to use a stun gun on her, if that's what you're telling me. But JonBenet would have gotten up anyway. And they would have had to let JonBenet use the restroom. Because JonBenet would have had to use the restroom anyway. Because she didn't get a chance to use the restroom. So JonBenet would have been up anyway to use the bathroom. And depending on how hard JonBenet was sleeping, she may have used the bathroom on the perpetrator. Possibly, she may have used the bathroom on them. But the fact of the matter is, this behavioral detail is critical. John said, when Burke wets the bed, we know what happened. Then the logic also applies to JonBenet. And there's no reason why it wouldn't. Then her waking up and relocating becomes highly plausible. One of Burke's beds was reportedly found made up in that morning. Patsy said he never makes his bed, which raises the possibility that someone else maybe used it. Maybe used another one of his beds. But it's possible also that that bed was never used at all. Because JonBenet never got into bed because Burke was downstairs doing whatever else he wanted to do. If JonBenet wet herself after sleeping from 8:45 to around 10, she might have got up, changed, because she could get up and change herself. They talk about the baby being redressed. Talk about she was redressed. JonBenet could have done that herself. That explains that. Because she was prone to getting up and redressing. This is why I'm telling you right now. She could have got up, changed herself, and walked to Burke's room. Burke is either downstairs with John, or John is going upstairs, and John is actually asleep at this point in time. If Burke waits till John, like he said, if Burke waits till John goes to sleep, Burke gets up after that. JonBenet goes looking for Burke, and I got to imagine that Patsy is hearing some baby footsteps going on around, so she's like kind of listening. She doesn't really have a problem with the babies moving around, but she's like, what are y'all doing? And she's listening to see maybe they're just going downstairs to play with their toys. And Patsy is like, I'm not trying to be on top of them like that. I'm going to let them play for a little bit, and they can sleep on the plane and whatever and so on and so forth. So she's probably just kind of waiting to see what happens. And so she probably dozes off, kind of waiting to see what goes on, and so she lays back down. And so, but like I said before, this is the intersection to where both children are awake. And so if they're both awake at the same time, then it's highly likely that they have been interacting together at this time. Not through coercion, but willingly playing together at the same time. I don't know what happened, but if JonBenet got up and she went to bed and she changed her clothes and went downstairs, it's possible that something was going on, because if Patsy is that open to hearing, then, and she hears Burke get up because Burke thinks he's slick. And if she hears Burke get up, and Burke doesn't go back to bed, or she doesn't hear the squeak of the door for him to go back to his room, then she's probably like tiptoeing around. But if she assumes that he got back in bed and he goes back in bed, she assumes that he did that and she goes back to sleep. But JonBenet ain't gonna be quiet for nothing. She's probably gonna walk over there and she's probably gonna you might hear some sort of I call them squishy footsteps when because I believe it was wood right there. I think it was wood on the I think the part of between the playroom. Let me just show you. I think right here was wood. I think all of this was wood. I think there was wood somewhere, and then I think right here between, I think right here was wood, because I feel like I remember carpet being right here and then wood being right here, because this was an old side of the house. This was old. If you look in this bathroom, it's old. It looks like an old bathroom. JonBenet's bathroom and probably Melinda's bathroom looks updated, and because this was made into because this was made into something. This was made into this was sort of created or remodeled. Then these are newer appliances and stuff like that. But down here for Burke, this bathroom looked old. It was an older style bathroom, and so I think there was like a hardwood floor right here. And so I could be wrong. Correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, but I think there was a hardwood floor right here. And I'll be able to double check. I'll be able to, check that. I just don't want to check it right now. But anyways, if Patsy heard JonBenet walking right here, then she was like, somebody up, somebody still moving. And so she hears Burke's door open, squeak open. And then she kind of hears some movement. And so the kids go downstairs, and Patsy probably gets up behind them and walks downstairs and comes downstairs to the kitchen and catches them. What y'all doing? And then Burke is like, oh, I was down here because I was hungry, and then JonBenet came down here. Either Burke had already made his food, or he used that excuse not to get in trouble and make it seem like he had just got up. And Patsy said, okay, I'm gonna make you a snack and then you go back to bed. She said she bought pineapple from Safeway in the big container from Safeway. So she probably said, you want some pineapple? We know that Burke was saying that pineapple is a favorite snack. So she probably went and got some pie. I think Patsy actually said that in the interviews. If I'm so, one of the two said it straight out, because John was avoiding it like the plague. And I think it was either Patsy or Burke who said, oh, yeah, we like pineapple. But anyways, Patsy comes down and Burke says, you know what? I want some tea. So here's the tea bag. They were both acting like they didn't understand what a tea bag was, but your fingerprints are on the cup. Your fingerprints are on the bowl. But this slick, smooth criminal who supposedly fed this stuff to Burke, or fed the stuff to JonBenet, now Burke's fingerprints and Patsy's fingerprints are on this thing. Again, triangulating, because they got some touch DNA on JonBenet's clothes. And then both of their DNA is on the cup and on the bowl. Patsy and Burke again together. And then Patsy hears Burke moving downstairs, so she keeps an eye on Burke. So again, we're triangulating with Patsy and Burke again. And so they're downstairs. Patsy says, let me make you something. So it's possible that she heard first Burke moving around downstairs. And Patsy said, you know what? Let me make you something. Because it's possible that Burke got caught going downstairs and Patsy came down behind him and made him some stuff. And so that would make sense, because they get together. She makes him whatever. And then whatever she does, goes back upstairs, goes back to sleep, says, don't stay up too late. Or she says, you know what? I need to pack some more, or what have you. And then JonBenet gets up looking for Burke, comes, doesn't find him, goes downstairs, and whatever ensues from there. That's a possibility. And this is why I say, throughout the investigation, especially in some of the later interviews, we see a constant pattern emerge, especially in the first interview. Patsy was rarely given the freedom to talk or elaborate on what she's saying. In the 2001, I have to remind you, in the 2001 deposition related to Chris Wolf's case, Lynn Wood was sitting right beside Patsy, monitoring every single thing that Patsy would say. Everything. You could see his arm. You could see his arm moving and twitching when they would ask Patsy something. You could see just from his elbow, he was leaning up and looking at every single thing that Patsy was reading. They would put an exhibit in front of Patsy, and Lynn Wood would lean up and read it. And before Patsy could answer, Lynn Wood would be like, you know what it is? He would get all in the way and stuff like that. He did the same thing in the 98 interviews and whatnot. He was, watching out for Patsy, doing what he's supposed to do, like a good lawyer is supposed to do. But but anyways, Lynn Wood is there watching Patsy, following their appearance with Michael Caine. Both John and Lynn Wood, when they go out, and we kind of analyze that interview as well, or that press conference as well. John and Lynn Wood are kind of looking down the line at Patsy, and you could see Lynn Wood kind of lean forward, just to kind of make sure that Patsy wasn't saying nothing crazy. Obviously, in the CNN interview, you can kind of see the same thing, and so this dynamic, and I was kind of noting it. But it's all coming back to play now, because this dynamic matters, because if JonBenet did in fact get up and move through the house that night, which is probable, something about her behavior, and something about her behavior makes it entirely possible, it would directly contradict the core premise that John and Patsy continued to repeat, that she never got up. So, I conclude with this. We now have a plausible reconstruction that JonBenet was exhausted. She was asleep when she got home. That's what you told me. She doesn't go to the bathroom. And when she doesn't go to the bathroom, according to you, it's highly likely that she gets up and goes to the restroom by herself without you even needing to help her, and changes her clothes and possibly changes beds. She wakes herself up, she wets herself, and follows a known pattern of behavior. You know it. You know the pattern. Gets up, changes possibly, and possibly moves to Burke's room. Burke is either like downstairs, kind of chilling out. And if that's the case, she goes downstairs looking for Burke. And then from there, now we know it's a high probability that both kids were awake at the same time, because Dr. Phil said, would you have heard anything? Do you think you heard anything? You were down there for just a little bit. Did anything happen? Did you hear anything? And Burke said no. But if JonBenet is coming down the stairs, going to the first floor right here, and I catch you in the kitchen somewhere right here, there is place for an interaction. I caught you. There is place for an interaction. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's what I've been looking for. And so for this reason, this is why I think they keep looking at Patsy, because no matter how much training Patsy got, sometimes you just say the wrong thing. You just keep saying the wrong thing. Sometimes you just don't get it. You're trying to be as authentic as possible, and you're saying, I don't know to this and I don't know to that. But there are some things that you're trying to explain authentically, that you answer them authentically, and it sparks an interest and says, oh, wait. You said Burke didn't get up, but Burke tells us he did get up. Wait. You said that JonBenet probably was taken in her sleep. But we now have evidence, according to you, that JonBenet may not have been asleep at all. JonBenet may have very much been awake. This is why because I kept saying, why are they treating Patsy like a child? Why do they keep jumping on and trying to force Patsy this and that? Why? Because Patsy could slip up and say something like this and explain too much, talk too much. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I still got let me know what you think in the comments. I still got some stuff to talk about. Look, I got a presentation on your boy Alex Hunter and what happened at the conclusion. Well, we all know what happened, but a little bit more insight on what happened at the conclusion of the grand jury that I want to talk about. That makes it more difficult to prosecute the Ramseys in this case. Makes it extremely difficult because of Alex Hunter. We're going to talk about that. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. You know what it is. Thank you for everybody who is supporting. Shout out USA for supporting. We got UK in the house. We got Canada in the house. People internationally. Peru. Man, what's up? New Zealand. What's up? And I think I saw somebody the other day, man, kind of going through my comments, man. And I try to get to the comments that I can see. But I saw somebody in my comments the other day said they were coming in or they are watching in from South Africa. I said, man, South Africa in the house, man. What's up? South Africa, man. That's what's up. Thank you. Big shout out again to Catherine, Eve of West, and CME for supporting this video. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope everybody enjoyed it. And once again, we're kind of moving forward, diving deeper is what I wanted to say. And until next time, take it easy.